Fox News.
Gas is expensive, so let the bank come to you. Through our remote deposit capture, you can deposit your checks into your account from your phone. And with our Dynamite Bank Pacific Visa debit card, you can use your money anytime, anywhere. It's the perfect combo.
Now we're banking on the future. Services to choose. Bank Pacific, where others put branches, we place roots.
Equal housing lender. Member FDIC. Crank it up.
Tell me about it, stud.
Circle K's Craft Beer and Whiskey Festival is back on Saturday, October 22nd. We rockin' and rollin' at the Dusitani Quam Resort from 2 to 10 p.m. Bring your friends and come dress in your best grease costume to win up to $500 in cash and prizes. So bust out those leather jackets and 50-style outfits as we party the night away at Circle K's Craft Beer and Whiskey Fest. Don't be a square. Get your tickets now at craftbeerfestguam.com or cruise on by any 76 Circle K location. Now that's cool, baby.
94 Republican members of Congress have written to House Speaker Pelosi urging her to uphold the Constitution and block what they call the president's illegal plan to cancel billions of dollars in student loan debt. Even some members of the president's own party expressing reservations.
Some Democrats are seeking distance, including Congressman Jake Auchincloss.
I think with similar amounts of money, you could have expanded Pell Grants. You could relieve medical debt for households throughout the United States. This would be more fair.
The vice president claims Republicans are being hypocritical.
A lot of the same people who are criticizing what we rightly did in following through on a commitment that we made to forgive student loan debt are the same people who voted for a tax cut for the richest Americans.
But there was at least a vote. There wasn't on student loan cancellation.
Fox's Peter Ducey at the White House. The Tax Foundation says 13 states could tax student loan debt cancellation as income. South Carolina House members plan to debate Tuesday a total new ban on abortion without exceptions for pregnancies caused by rape or incest, even as some Republicans in the GOP-dominated legislature suggest they cannot vote for the bill as it's written now. A Washington Commanders rookie recovering after being shot in Washington on Sunday.
Brian Robinson Jr. was a third-round pick of the Washington Commanders out of the University of Alabama. Police say he was confronted by two teenagers and wrestled to get the gun away from one of them when he was shot. The team is hopeful Robinson will be able to play at some point this season. Commanders head coach Ron Rivera told reporters something must be done.
I think it's about, the community being aware and the community really just saying enough's enough, coming together, supporting our elected officials, helping them.
In Washington, Mike Emanuel, Fox News.
And I'm Jack Callahan. This is Fox News.
Subway's Eat Fresh Refresh brings you the sequel to the Sweet Onion Chicken Teriyaki. Enjoy the new Sweet Onion Steak Teriyaki. Delight your taste buds with tender, juicy steak marinated in the tangy new Sweet Onion Teriyaki sauce and stacked high on toasted artisan Italian bread, topped with American cheese, green peppers, red onions, and drizzled with the tangy new Sweet Onion Teriyaki sauce. The new Sweet Onion Steak Teriyaki is the height of food craveability. Give in to your cravings at Subway. Eat fresh.
Listen to The Point anytime, anywhere on Odyssey. Odyssey is your new audio home for all the music, news, sports, and podcasts that matter to you. Find your favorite stations like The Point and discover more. Music stations, local and trusted news sources, sports talk and team coverage, plus today's biggest podcasts. Find it all on the Odyssey app. AUDACY.
Welcome to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the only show on talk radio where common sense is a lot more common. Phone lines are now open at 888-TALK. That's 888-8255. And now, The Point proudly brings you Tall Tales with Senator Bob Klitzkie.
A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. What a great way to start a radio program. The Second Amendment to the United States Constitution, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. A theme that pervades this show from the beginning to the end. Tall Tales, a constitutionally oriented conservative call-in talk show. Next, we go to Zemi Ikotny. Zemi Ikotny is my backwards play on words, my backwards bilingual play on words, because Zemi Ikotny means press the meat. I turn it around so that it becomes meet the press. The only difference between meet the press on Tall Tales and the one that Chuck Todd used to do is that Tall Tales is a whole lot better. You'll recall that I will examine the editorial pages of each of our newspapers, go through each of the newspapers with my blue pencil, mark up the grammatical and English usage errors, the faulty theories, etc. Having completed that, I will give the better of the two the coveted blue star. And the word out on the street is that when the blue star is awarded, if you're standing outside the door to the editorial boardroom of the winner, you can hear the champagne corks popping. Unfortunately, the Post quit writing editorials about 3 months ago, and the Daily News put something on paper that they call an editorial, but it really ain't. So I haven't been awarding any blue stars for quite some time. Today is no exception. This is a Daily News editorial. Fanacho Famalawan means women rising, an appropriate sentiment for an organization driven by visionary women committing to supporting the careers, ideas, and endeavors of other women making their mark on Guam. The Guam Women's Chamber of Congress has been leading the movement of women entrepreneurs with a vision that states, quote, Guam will be an island community whose economy is driven and influenced by the equal participation of women in business. Guam Women Chamber of Commerce, guess what? I think you're there already. The ongoing movement can be seen everywhere in Guam as Guam's women entrepreneurs, executive creators, and leaders turn their knowledge and passion into opportunities that help other women set their own paths for success. The Guam Women's Chamber of Commerce, which has been advocating for Guam businesswomen for the past 8 years, continues its women-focused mission, and next month will host the organization's annual Leadership Summit. The event at the Dusit promises to bring participants an agenda of activities and discussions developed. Anyhow, I don't think I got to go to the end here. I'll just go to the punchline. We encourage all women from all walks of life to find out more about the Guam Women's Chamber of Congress, Fanacho Famalawan, and all the events, services, and support for the organization makes possible. Well, I've been off on this subject before. You know, legislature before last, we had 10 women out of 15 members. We have a female governor. We've had a female chief justice of the Supreme Court. We have a female speaker of the Guam legislature. I got a list of female leaders in the business community from the Chamber of Commerce, as though there's a difference, right? And there's a long list, you know, like just recently there was an article in the paper that the new chief executive at Masson was a woman. And Atkins Kroll, a company that's been around since 1914, was headed by a woman. And on and on and on and on and on. So I think it's great. I think that whatever works, fine. I'm all for it. And women can be very good at business. But isn't it time maybe we start saying that women and men are capable of doing whatever they're capable of, instead of saying, well, you know, we have to give special treatment to women. Maybe I'm just saying that because I'm a man. Let's go to the card and check and see what's on the card for today. Okay, today's card, of course, we start out with Paul Zerzan versus systemic racism. And I go from there to Anderson versus the stranger, who we found out is actually a man named Matt Topasnia, who is said to be the lieutenant governor's partner. And the reason that he was there at the time that Nancy came in, the reason that he was there with the governor and the light governor was because the lieutenant governor is not very good at driving at night. So Matt is the night driver. So, you know, every time one question, I started out by asking, who in the heck is this guy? Every time one question is answered, it leads to another question. Okay, so Matt Topasnia is the lieutenant governor's partner. Lieutenant governor doesn't drive at night so well. Matt is the night driver. Let's check the protocol list and find out where the right driver of the lieutenant governor fits in the hierarchy of the manakilu of the government of Guam. You know, is he high enough so that when the Speaker of the House comes in and the governor and lieutenant governor go out there and shake and out, he has to be there too? Maybe somebody can answer that for me. And while we're at it, we have a new mystery man that we want to ask you. See if you can identify this character. Yeah, right there. We'll show you him again, but this is the new mystery man. He wasn't at the airport with Matt and Josh and Lou and Nancy, but we'll try to have a new mystery man. Every time we get to the bottom of one, we'll try to find a new one. Okay, so we've got, that's still on the card. We move on to Apparon, former Archbishop Apparon versus the Archdiocese of Agana. We've got Kamalan Karadat versus the Archdiocese of Agana. We've got Tall Tales versus Rob San Augustine and OHAP. Now, if you don't know what OHAP is, I'll get there in a few minutes. We've got French versus Garland. Don't be misled. This is not Frenchy. This is different. And I've got Solomons versus the United States, Christian versus transgenderism, LGB versus T. I don't think I'll get that far. So we'll just see how it goes here with the card. Paul Zerzan versus systemic racism. I think you all remember that when Paul Zerzan wrote a letter to the editor and said, stop calling it red rice. It ain't red, it's orange. You remember the Daily News came storming back, leave our red rice alone. So the red rice is the symbol of the narrative. If you want to be accepted and not run the risk of cancellation, you better call this stuff red rice. If you're the crazy kind of guy like I am that concentrates on the facts and the truth, and if it's not red, you don't call it red, you call it orange, you in a heap of trouble because you might be canceled. They tried to cancel Paul Zerzan, and as you'll see a little later on, Hope Cristobal tried to cancel. Actually, she did cancel Paul Zerzan, not with any sense of cleverness, but she showed that she is able to holler louder and longer than just about anybody, certainly Paul Zerzan. Okay, going on the card. Next item on the card, I've got the Public Law 84, as you were 36-34. Mayor's Council of Guam did it again. Jose, item number 9 on the agenda for the Mayor's Council meeting on September 7 is new business. Do you know what new business they'll be discussing?
I have no idea.
Nor do I. Therefore, whatever action they take on September 7 is void, because the law since June has required that every notice of every meeting contain the agenda for that meeting, and the agenda must be in sufficient detail as to put on notice anyone who reads it as to what's going on in that meeting. Failure. Okay, next we come to Archbishop Anthony Apparon not. Former Archbishop Anthony Apparon. You'll recall that he had a trial at the Vatican, and the punishment that was levied upon him for criminal sexual conduct with children was that he is to never return to Guam, and he is to never use the title Archbishop or any of the trappings of being an Archbishop. So he's not defrocked. He's not excommunicated. He's still a Catholic, but he's not a bishop, and he can never come back to Guam. So the litigation that began because of Apparon continues. There are now over 300 people who have suits pending in the district and superior courts against various officials, priests, and whatever in the Catholic Church that abuse the children. I think there are 5 against Apparon himself, one of whom is his nephew. And because of these pending suits, the Catholic Church, the Archdiocese of Agana, has declared bankruptcy. Now, you know, people kick the word bankruptcy around a lot, but I think it's probably well that I take the time to explain what bankruptcy really amounts to. Bankruptcy doesn't mean you don't have any more money and you got to go out on the street with a tin cup or a plastic pop bottle. What bankruptcy means is that you're no longer able to keep your obligations with your creditors. So by filing a suit in the district court, paying a filing fee, and filling out some papers, you set up a bankruptcy. Now, there are several different kinds. The most important are chapters 7 and 11. And we have the Law and Order notebook here, Jose. Yeah, chapter 7 is a straight litigation bankruptcy. Chapter 11 is a reorganization bankruptcy, starting with 7. So when a person or a couple declare bankruptcy, the bankruptcy court makes them file a list of all of their assets, and they're forbidden from disposing of any of their assets. And then the bankruptcy court puts out a notice to creditors, and people that are owed money by the bankrupt turn in their claims as to how much the bankrupt owes. And of course, it'll be the amount of the claims will be greater than the assets of the bankrupt. So the court will decide what priority the claims are to be dealt with, and then it will order the disposal of the assets of the bankrupt, and the proceeds from the disposal of the assets will be distributed to the claimants in the bankruptcy in accordance with the formula decided upon by the court. The bankrupt then owes no one a nickel. He has a fresh start. He doesn't owe anybody anything. And he is not able to declare bankruptcy for 7 more years. So somebody who declared bankruptcy yesterday, pretty darn good credit risk today. And that, of course, is one of the policy reasons underlying bankruptcy. Now, when we're talking a Chapter 11 bankruptcy, it's a reorganization bankruptcy, and it's for companies, corporations, souls, etc. The company or corporation soul continues to operate under supervision of the court. The assets are gathered together and inventoried. The claims are solicited, and the creditors and the bankrupt with court supervision come up with a plan as to how the claims will be litigated, with the understanding that ordinarily an ongoing business is in a better position to pay off the claims than a business that's stopped dead in its tracks. So with the Archbishop, as we're the Archdiocese of Agana, we have a Chapter 11 bankruptcy. The church continues to operate. It continues to collect money as churches do. It has a list of the creditors. There is court proceedings to determine how much each of the creditors should be paid from the assets of the church. The matter is under the supervision of the court. Sometimes the court will appoint a trustee in bankruptcy to operate the company. sometimes the court will appoint what's called a debtor in possession. So in the Archdiocese case, the debtor in possession is Archbishop Michael Burns, who has many of the duties and responsibilities of a trustee, some of the powers of a trustee. So that's where we are. We had a call, Jose?
Yeah, there was a question about how bankruptcy works and assets. You know, every Sunday or the church usually takes up a collection or two, and they're wondering how does someone know their collection is going towards what's intended, the church, or towards this bankruptcy?
Goes to the bankruptcy, yeah. And
that's the answer.
That is the answer. That's the way bankruptcy works, yeah. And as I mentioned, the court determines the priority. You know, there are secured creditors, you know, like someone with a mortgage. There are creditors like banks. There are creditors that have tort claims, like the unfortunates that were abused by clergy, etc. But the church, the Archdiocese, is not able to spend any money without court permission. Okay, so this article ran in the Post. It's kind of a surprising article because Chief Judge Francis Gatewood really kind of comes into it in a manner that I hadn't expected. So here's the article. A federal judge challenged Pope Francis to help resolve cases of sexual abuse instead of dragging the process out in court. Now, that's quite a mouthful, because ordinarily judges don't challenge anybody, including popes. Now, during the whole time that Apparon was here and the parishioners were trying to get him out of here, this undercurrent of conversation came along. Why doesn't the Vatican do something? And then after Apparon left and the suits began to be filed, shouldn't the Vatican be paying these things? Well, I will give a short instruction here as to the governance of the Catholic Church as far as I understand it. I'm not as much of an expert here as I am on the law. Beep, beep. Yeah. Yeah, I'm an expert on two things, you know, that I'm kind of proud of. One, I really know the law, and two, I'm very proud of my humility and my modesty, yeah. So in the Catholic Church, the Archdiocese is really the fundamental organ of government. The governance of Catholic affairs takes place in the Archdiocese or the diocese, and the bishop or archbishop is the guy who runs the archdiocese or the diocese. The difference between an archbishop and a bishop is that an archbishop presides over a diocese, and there are criteria that distinguish a diocese, a regular diocese, from an archdiocese. So it's the bishop that runs the finances, ordains priests, and basically is a benevolent dictator. He runs the show. The Pope appoints bishops. He elevates some bishops to the rank of cardinal, which is really a well-dressed bishop. And he also provides over the various offices in the Vatican, like the I can't remember the names of some of them, like Doctrine for the Preservation of the Faith and dicasteries and things like that. There's a significant bureaucracy at the Catholic Church in the Vatican that deals with doctrine and other things. Of course, the Vatican is an independent sovereign country, so it has ambassadors and everything that a sovereign country has. But when it comes to the bishop, as you were the Pope ordering a bishop to do something, he can, but he doesn't very often. And if he does and the bishop doesn't obey, the bishop does not get his pink slip overnight. Bishops are very independent in the governance of the church. Now, people have tried to sue the Pope, saying that that popes and priests are actually employees of the bishop, as you were, of the Vatican.
Nope.
So that when a priest or a bishop commits a tort, that the Pope is vicariously liable for the torts of the bishops and the priests. And that theory has never gone anywhere. Courts have held that priests and popes are not employees, therefore the liability that is generated by them does not reflect back to the Pope. That's what respondeat superior means. So it's very difficult to hang it on the Pope. When a church is in financial trouble, the Pope is not going to come along and bail them out. And I think probably that was a surprise. People thought, well, certainly the Pope will come along and help us out. It's not going to happen. So going back to this article here, federal judge challenged Pope Francis to help resolve cases of sexual abuse instead of dragging the process out in court. On Friday morning in district court, Chief Judge Francis Tydenko Gatewood, do you know why Francis Tydenko Gatewood is the chief judge of the District Court of Guam, Jose?
Because she's the only chief judge of the district.
She's the only judge of the district.
Only judge.
Yeah. She heard arguments on whether a complaint accusing former Archbishop Anthony Apparan of raping and molesting a minor attending Father Duenas Memorial School during school year 1994-1995 should be dismissed. As counsel representing the Vatican, who the plaintiff, who goes by the initials DM, holds accountable for Apparan's actions, argued for the dismissal. Tydenko Gatewood asked numerous times throughout the hearing why Pope Francis couldn't be part of the solution. Why doesn't the Pope just reach out and touch all of these victims and really come to some kind of resolution? Tydenko Gatewood said before referring to another case she presides over, which involves hundreds of sexual assault survivors, including DM, seeking compensation from the Archdiocese of Agana. If you hear them in the courtroom, they're crying. They really are. I have 70-year-old men who were abused when they were 12 years old, and when I hear a 70-year-old man who tells me, Judge, when I was 12 years old, these are the acts that were inflicted upon me by a 200-pound man, that's heartbreaking. The Vatican Council responded saying DM will be compensated in the other case. And Tydenko Gatewood replied once again with a challenge to the Pope. It doesn't have to be that way, Tydenko Gatewood said, as she explained that lawyer fees alone in these cases take a significant amount of money away from the victims. And it's already up at several $1 million for attorney's fees. The Vatican's motion to dismiss the case stems partly from the plaintiff's counsel not serving the Vatican with a complaint properly. Now, when you start serving summonses and complaints, even doing it, just a summons and complaint here, it's technical, and you got to do it right or it doesn't count. But when you start doing it, when you start serving your papers in a foreign country, it becomes even harder. And if that foreign country happens to be the Vatican, you can say that again in spades. So Michael Dotz, an attorney for DM, admitted there were errors, but explained requirements needed to serve the Vatican included translating documents to Latin and Italian. Wow. Now, everybody knows that lawyers can speak Latin, right? No, lawyers can't speak Latin. I've mentioned this so many times before. The first thing you do when you go to, as far as Latin is concerned, the first thing you do with Latin when you get to law school is learn how to mispronounce all the terms. As I mentioned before, if a lawyer went before a judge and said, Your Honor, I have submitted to this court a petition for a writ of habeas corpus, the judge would say, what in the hell are you talking about? And pick it up and say, oh, you want a writ of habeas corpus? Why didn't you say so? So no, lawyers don't speak Latin. Lawyers don't speak Italian. Well, I suppose Rudy Giuliani might speak Italian.
Only with his hands.
Yeah, he's had an awfully difficult time with English in the last couple of years, right? Okay, so Dot says it's a difficult process on purpose, not to protect the due process of the defendant, but because it makes it more difficult on the plaintiff, make it more costly on the plaintiff, said Dotz. When Vatican's counsel was asked by Tydinko Gatewood if rules such as this could be waived, the Vatican's counsel said they could. Does that mean they would? No. The judge asked the counsel for the Vatican a question of law. Counsel has to answer truthfully. If those rules can be waived, he's got to say yeah. Even if his client would say, no, we're not waiving any rules. Following the arguments, Tydinko Gatewood took the matter under advisement and said she would announce her decision at a later date. Well, the whole Aperon thing is probably one of the saddest things that ever happened to this island. It's right up there with the Japanese invasion, I think. The heartbreak, the suffering, the disappointment, because, it's no secret that people hold priests in extremely high regard, and that people hold bishops in extremely high regard. If you wanted, at one time, we had 3 first cousins that held the top jobs on the island. We had Judge Duenas. Cristobal Duenas was the judge of the district court. We didn't have a Supreme Court in those days, so the judge of the district court was the top judiciary official. We had Carlos Camacho as the governor of Guam, a civil official, and we had Felix Berto Flores, who was the Archbishop of Agana. Those 3 guys are first cousins. They were first cousins. And the talk on the street was, you must talkilo a bishop. The bishop is the highest of the 3. Standpoint of respect and authority, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So when we found out in the case of Aperon that our idol had feet of clay, figuratively, I think it was a real shock and a real disappointment to an awful lot of people. And then as the whole thing unwound, the shock became greater and greater. Aperon didn't do himself any favors. He insulted the victims. He tried to gaslight the public. He went to the Vatican and did a selfie as though, he'd gone there on his own volition and he wanted to get to the bottom of this. And quite a performance. The Vatican then sent an interim bishop. What was his title?
Hahn.
Say again?
Archbishop Hahn.
Yeah, what was his title? Do you remember?
Oh, I can't remember.
Yeah. It wasn't interim. It was sort of like, it'll come back to me right after the show's over. So Hahn came out here, and his first mass insulted everybody. He was standing out in front of the church. There were pickets, a picket line in front of the church for 54 Sundays in a row. And you talk about Manamco. This was the Manamco. Oh, folks out there every Sunday for 54 Sundays carrying signs, defrock Aperon, Aperon must go, et cetera, et cetera. So when Hahn came along, the first thing he said from the porch of the cathedral this will be over in 2 weeks, which only steeled the resolve of the picture. You think so, huh? Well, and then after the Mass, one of the people who became a plaintiff in the lawsuit, one of the guys who was abused as a child, wanted to approach Hahn. Hahn literally turned his back on that man and walked away from him. In front of, I say probably 40 or 50 people saw this. And from then on, it was downhill for Hahn, too. And talk about faith in the Vatican faded pretty fast because no one thought that we'd get anything from the Vatican. Okay, we come up to our first break here.
We're already Pika's best radio station, but we're always looking for ways to be even better.
Announcing the point on Alexa.
In addition to our FM and HD radio feeds, our incredible app, informative website, Facebook Live, and YouTube Live, you can now tell Alexa to stream The Point. And your smart speaker will start playing whatever we're saying. News and views 24/7 with your 4-word command. Alexa, stream The Point.
Guam Regional Medical City was awarded Advanced Primary Stroke Center certification from the Joint Commission. What does this mean? It means our neuroscience team is equipped with the latest technology and a team of the finest neurological doctors to treat stroke, which is one of the leading causes of death on Guam. GRMC, reflecting our commitment to providing safe and quality patient care. For more information about GRMC, visit us at grmc.gu or to make an appointment, call 671-633-GRMC.
Welcome back to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, Guam's single voice of reason. Call now, 888-TALK. That's 888-8255.
Okay, here we go. Back to Tall Tales, and the next item on the card is Tall Tales versus Camelon Caradot versus the Archdiocese of Agana. There is no more Camelon Caradot. I don't know when people are going to wake up to that. People like in the newspaper business, as an example. Camelon Caradot was part of the whole Aperon, for want of a better term, mechanism. Camelon Caradot and Deacon Frank Tenorio were very closely allied with Archbishop Aperon. And when Aperon finally fell, there were an awful lot of questions about Camelon Caradot. For instance, they had over $100,000 worth of assets. And as far as I recall, no one was ever able to get at the books for Camelon Caradot to see where the contributions went, et cetera. So what happened was that Archbishop Burns, dissolved Camelon Caradot and brought the project into the church. So now I can't remember the name of it. Do you know, Jose?
I think it's Ministry to the Poor.
Ministry to the Poor, run by...
Ooh, gosh.
But it's run by the Archdiocese.
By the Archdiocese.
Yes, there's no separate organization anymore. Yeah, so there were a lot of funny things that happened during that time with Camelon Caradot. And as far as I'm concerned, there are still a lot of open questions about Camelon Caradot that somebody needs to dig into and answer. But there is no Camelon Caradot anymore. I noticed an interesting post here from Ishmael Velez, who says, well, on active duty, I coordinated a food drive. I selected Camelon Caradot Kusinan. We raised so much food and water. But when it came time for Command Master Chief to review the charity, he said that it is difficult for us as an organization to support KKK, Camelon Caradot Kusinan.
That's what his initials were.
Yeah.
KKK. You know, and what I think is interesting, because that I worked with you and the rest of the concerned Catholics during this time.
Yeah.
And I've done some work with Common Carrot because I was a part of KOLG, or still a part of KOLG as well. And what I found, what really bothered me a lot, is how it was found that there's a lot of stuff that was being done in the name of Common Carrot to sort of hide things. And I think people really, Jose DePago had said here, Frenchie has the 401 on the church, and that's junglewatch.info, which is actually started by Tim Rohr, or created by Tim Rohr, to try to explain what's going on, because it's very complex but very straightforward. There's a lot of stuff that people really ought to read up on, because it's a really good story as far as explaining some things, but there's still a lot of questions left open.
Yeah, absolutely.
Including an organization called the Neo-Catechumenical Way, which, for the most part, the leaders that were here, I believe, were corrupt in a way that they were not very forthright with what's going on here on Guam.
The Neocats.
Yeah.
Okay, moving right along. Next item on the card is Tall Tales versus Rob San Augustine and OHAP. This is an article in the Daily, as it were, the Post. OHAP. It doesn't matter why people are homeless. We can't judge why. That's what Mr. OHAP said. I wonder if Mr. Culligan knows Mr. OHAP. By the way, don't forget the Rogues Gallery during the breaks, Jose. Maybe we can go with Frenchie and Mr. Culligan's truck. There are multiple sides to every story, but when it comes to homelessness, the Office of Homeless Assistance and Poverty Prevention said it's not really a matter of why a person is homeless. And I got that far and I said, wrong. It does matter why a person is homeless. But we'll get into that, and you're going to find out what I think about this whole thing, which is not going to be very complimentary to the organization. So the article says they still need to help them get off the streets. Well, sometimes, usually, most of the time. And then here's a quote. Yeah, we can't judge why. A lot of times it is decisions they make, but we just have to, as government agencies, make sure we have all the stuff in line for them to get support. Rob San Augustine, OHAP acting director, said, be reminded that they are people too. If they can call OHAP and let us know where you see somebody, we can do an outreach. Oh, they'll reach out to these people, Jose. Yeah. Of course, a lot of them don't. A lot of them do have phones. That's the interesting thing. Get the information we can and see what they need. Now, a person can be homeless for many reasons, but St. Augustine doesn't believe that anyone chooses to be homeless. Well, then he hasn't done his research. Because anyone who's done his research knows that there are some who, even if a room is available, want to stay out on the street. A lot of them don't have a full kit in their brain housing gear, but since 1975, civil authorities are not in a position to really make decisions based on that. St. Augustine says, I don't know if they choose. It may well deal with the path of least resistance. A lot of it has to do with family. A lot of times we ask why they are homeless, and they say, I've lived with my brother or sister, siblings, their house is full, or we got into a fight, things like that, he said. There are many perceptions of homeless people, like they are lazy, on drugs, or mentally challenged. You know why people feel that way, Jose? Why there are many perceptions like that? Because it's true. That's the reason. But St. Augustine said it is often a misconception. And then another quote from St. Augustine. I've learned that we need to keep our humanity available for these people. Now, you know what my standard slogan is about the government. This is what I'm looking for. I'm looking for an effective, efficient government operating within the rule of law that provides basic government services on at least a break-even basis. Is it the government's job to provide free housing for anyone who wants it? Hell no. That's not the government's job. So if your attitude is, well, we've got to be human here, we can't judge, we'll just find housing for everybody, that's what you're doing. So you have to find out, Rob, you got to find out why they're homeless, because the only justification for having the OHAP is to help people go from where they are now to a position where they can afford housing. Not to say, well, you don't have to live on the street anymore. You can go, how old are you, 25? Yeah, you can go over here, when you're 65. No, you're not going to draw Social Security because you're not working. But you can stay here for the rest of your life because we have a heart and we're not going to judge. So our job is just to make sure people don't live on the street. We are not going to inquire. We're not going to make anything. We're not going to be concerned at all why you're there. It's just our job to get you into housing. This is wrong. The only reason to have this OHAP outfit is to help people get from where they are to where they need to be, not from get to where they are to free housing for the rest of their lives or whatever, or until the government goes broke. When everybody figures out, well, yeah, I got a job, pay is lousy, the boss is the hours are bad, I really don't like it at all. I understand that if I go out with a tent out on the street for one day, they'll come along and pick me up and take me to an apartment somewhere. I think I'll do that. It just can't work that way. All right, let's take a short break, Jose.
Family Finance has been serving the people of Guam since 1959, and they will continue to be there for you in the years to come. Whether you're looking to get a personal loan for that summer vacation or paying off those long overdue bills, Family Finance has got you covered. Apply for a personal loan from $1,000 up to $4,100 by calling Family Finance in Hagåtña at 671-475-4545, Upper Tumon 671-647-5626, or in Dededo 671-633-4473.
Tell me about it, stud.
Circle K's Craft Beer and Whiskey Festival is back on Saturday, October 22nd. We rockin' and rollin' at the Dusatani Guam Resort from 2 to 10 p.m. Bring your friends and come dressed in your best grease costume to win up to $500 in cash and prizes. So bust out those leather jackets and 50-style outfits as we party the night away at Circle K's Craft Beer and Whiskey Fest. Don't be a square. Get your tickets now at craftbeerfestguam.com or cruise on by any 76 Circle K location. Now that's cool, baby.
Okay, I'll take a break here and find out what another Joe has to say, and then I've got Repeat on the line. Go ahead, another Joe.
Okay, Bob. So ironically, we haven't been addressing the issue of where people live, and going back to what you famously like to bring up with the compact impact regarding every year we can expect new arrivals, and this is not like stateside or arrivals going from Europe visiting, touring around the United States, and then going back to their respective countries, or attempting to become U.S. citizens, or somewhere along those lines. And then the young people in the U.S. who go to travel maybe to Europe, usually between the age of 18 or 22, something like that. You see more commonly here in Guam and around the United States. You see missionaries, well, mostly here in anyway. So again, between the age of 18 and 22, early 20s. So that's the closest thing I can compare it to. Here, with the Gulf countries, they're not arriving as tourists. They're arriving as economic refugees. And our national federal government is playing these word games, saying, no, they're habitual residents or something.
You mean the people? You mean the Kofa folks? Is that what you're talking about?
Our fellow brothers surrounding us, yes.
Okay, all right. People that come from the freely associated states, the technical term for them when they are here is habitual residents. They're not, we have non-immigrant aliens, we have permanent residents, we have citizens, and they invented a brand new category for the folks that came from the freely associated states, habitual residents. So they come, they can stay as long as they want. They don't need visas to enter the United States.
So a percentage of them, Uncle Bob, are becoming homeless. And quite a few of them, I don't know what percentage it is, but they're losing their documents, meaning they're kind of stuck here until their country assists them. And so basically, we're not having that conversation about here locally, and we don't have a seat at the table with the Compact Impact negotiations. So basically, our national federal government is mistreating the people of Guam. As you said, that our delegates should be paying attention to this and getting attention for Guam. The U.S. citizens residents of Guam should be represented. And I guess I think it was your opinion or your impression and a lot of other people's impression that was not happening. So now we're paying attention because it's Chinese. The Chinese are coming from CNMI of all places. So we're not going to put the blame on CNMI leaders. So definitely we're not participating in this leadership, this decision-making process. We don't get a seat at the table, and it's the same story for 30-plus years, going on 40 years, and it's ridiculous already. Our elders might have tolerated it because we're so grateful for being, for just being able to be U.S. citizens and being liberated. But I think we've progressed from there where we can expect a higher standard. So
let me remind you of this, another Joe. We have this earned income tax credits, right?
Okay.
And I've explained many times on the air why we don't have to pay that. We don't pay it because it's a federal requirement. We pay it because a local law requires us to pay it. And guess what portion of the population benefits the most from the earned income tax credit? It's that same group. Right. But nobody, no one had the courage to say we're going to stop, except for Carl Gutierrez, who said we're not going to pay that anymore. He was the only one that was gutsy enough to do it. So when it comes down to hard decisions like this, I'm afraid what I just read here from Rob San Augustine, is kind of the prevailing attitude. Well, we can't be in judgment, and we got to get them off the street. We got to get them into a house or something like that. And if we are thinking with our hearts instead of our heads, we're going to wind up with some really harsh results over the long run. Another Joe.
Usually we leave that to the private sector, right? The nonprofits to help. They'll do a better job than the government.
Well, it used to be, I can remember my youth that, when the community chest and the Red Cross came out, everybody contributed. I would have felt bad if I hadn't. But that was before the government got in the business of, quote, helping people. And I think there's a general attitude now, why should I give to charity when the government's handing out food stamps and welfare and cell phones and all the rest of this stuff? So private charity is just a shadow of what it used to be.
Okay, well, I think the message that we are sharing here is people should get more involved in the community and have less smaller government, not have the government be the number one primary go-to assist the people. let people help each other in the private sector, and address wherever the government doesn't have to get involved, where nonprofits can get involved, we should encourage that. And I'm hoping that the Catholic Social Services will be able to do that independently from all this debt or all this legal obligations due to the sex crimes settlements. I don't know if that's possible, Bob. I don't know we can.
I don't think that they're included in the bankrupt estate, so they're not affected by the bankruptcy.
So everyone should donate to Catholic Social Services instead of in the church. So
well, if that's what your game is, yeah.
So Catholic Social Services, maybe go to church and give a few dollars, but the majority of your donations should go to Catholic Social Services because they're going to help us, our elders, our men uncle, with caseworkers, with adult daycare, with food delivery, all those other things that we've had before that they're reducing, that they're providing less of because of who knows what reason. Anyway, Bob, thanks for your time, and everyone, please. Listen to Bob Klitzkie's show, Tall Tales, and learn from his wisdom and find ways to help our community. Thank you, Bob.
You're right. Hit the nail right on the head there, another Joe. So we got about, 2 minutes to the halftime show. I'm just going to take a check on Facebook here, and we'll get to repeat right after the big halftime. Well, wait a minute. We've got Hope's screen. We'll do repeat, and then we'll do Hope's screen test. We don't want to keep repeat waiting too long. Oh, yeah. Let's see what I've got here. Okay, Jose Ted Pago Jr. wondering why nobody hollering about the $1 million hospital design proposal, which never transpired since last year. Has this purchase order been paid out already? Remember, I covered that on the show, and it's an interesting story. The governor bragged about the planning's all done. Candida sunshine on it, couldn't get any papers at all. One of the newspapers had to really dig to get any information at all, and it found out that most of the deadlines had passed, and a company named Matrix had not delivered what they were supposed to deliver. So we're really nowhere with our, new hospital that we've all talked about so much and we're all waiting for. It just isn't happening. Okay, time for the big halftime show. We'll be right back after the big halftime show.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
Decision Day on a Special Master. I'm Jack Callahan, Fox News. A federal judge in Florida expected to rule on the motion from former President Trump to appoint an independent third party to oversee the government's review of the documents seized in the raid on his home 3 weeks ago. The Justice Department arguing the review has already been completed by their own in-house taint team, which has found documents that were covered by attorney-client privilege and says they'll exclude from the investigation. The Trump legal team suggesting the Justice Department cannot be trusted to police itself. Assistant FBI Special Agent in charge of the Washington field office, Timothy Thibault, has abruptly resigned from the Bureau over the weekend. Senator Chuck Grassley had said whistleblowers have told him that Thibault imposed his political beliefs on high-profile investigations. Ohio Congressman Jim Jordan says several FBI employees have come forward as whistleblowers claiming the Bureau is tainted with political bias.
That's why Thibault left today. He left today because he was the guy who pressured to bury the Hunter Biden story, the whistleblower told Senator Grassley, and a different whistleblower told us he was the same guy who's pressuring agents to catalog all cases as domestic violent extremism cases when they're not.
Congressman Jordan also opening a congressional inquiry into Justice Department Inspector General Michael Horowitz over the seizure of a congressman's cell phone containing privileged information the day after the Trump raid. Much of Mississippi's state capital is without running water, and what does come out of the tap, they warn, isn't safe to drink. This following a failure of the city's water treatment plant.
It means the city cannot produce enough water to fight fires, to reliably flush toilets, and to meet other critical needs.
Mississippi's Governor Tate Reeves says the National Guard will assist in emergency water distribution efforts, which will begin in the morning. America is listening to Fox News.
Half a day. This is Clara Manglona from Security Title. A power of attorney can be a useful tool in a real estate transaction, but if abused, it can result in devastating loss. Choosing your representative should be done with the utmost care and should be very specific about the powers being granted. To mitigate loss, the team at Security Title confirms with the owner prior to using a power of attorney to sell the property. Each transaction is unique. Let the professionals at Security Title use our experience to facilitate a secure closing. We are here to help.
The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training.
Hi, I'm Jerry Roberts, and every day on The Ray Gibson Show, I get to comment on the incredibly diverse, fun, challenging, sometimes frustrating, often exciting, but always interesting world of work. I hope you'll be there with us.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at guamtraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts, brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point.
In Oakland, California, a school shooting Monday in which both the victim and the alleged shooter were sixth graders.
Oakland police say a 13-year-old who was shot at Madison Park Academy is recovering from his injuries in a hospital. The 12-year-old suspect and the firearm taken into custody.
It's going to take all of our efforts to reduce gun violence in Oakland. Some people are arguing that it's a resource issue or that it is a police department issue. This is a people issue.
Police Chief LaRon Armstrong. Officers say the investigation is ongoing and they do not know the motive. Madison Park Academy is a public 6 through 12 grade school. Kristen Goodwin, Fox News.
Police in Bend, Oregon say a 66-year-old man at a Safeway supermarket may have saved lives when he attacked a shooter in the store on Sunday. Employee and Army veteran Donald Surratt Jr. was shot and killed while trying to disarm the man, who then took his own life. The nation's biggest retailer firing back on the government's claims it helps scammers steal money from people.
Walmart is asking a court to dismiss a lawsuit brought by the Federal Trade Commission accusing the retail giant of allowing scam artists to use its money transfer services. Court documents filed Monday reveal Walmart accused the FTC of overreach. In the lawsuit, the government says scammers were able to steal hundreds of millions of dollars from customers because the retailer failed to properly secure its money transfer services, didn't properly train employees, and failed to alert customers about potential scams. Rich Dennison, Fox News.
In Ukraine, explosions have been reported following the shelling near the spent fuel storage area of the Zaporizhia nuclear power plant, which has been held by the Russians since the early days of the invasion. This amid growing fears of a potential nuclear catastrophe at Europe's largest nuclear power facility. I'm Jack Callahan. This is Fox News.
Gas is expensive, so let the bank come to you. Through our remote deposit capture, you can deposit your checks into your account from your phone. And with our Dynamite Bank Pacific Visa debit card, you can use your money anytime, anywhere. It's the perfect combo.
Now we're banking on the future. Services to choose. Bank Pacific, where others put branches, we place roots.
Equal housing lender. Member FDIC. Crank it up.
Choice Broadcasting introduces their unbeatable lineup of morning shows.
Hands down winners of Guam's morning radio battle.
Daryl Lizama grooves his way through Boss 104 playing Guam's favorite classic hits.
Morning Mouth Ray Gibson shakes the cage on 93.3 The Point.
And now, we are proud to announce the Morning Blender with Kyle Mandapat, mixing it up at sunrise on Star 101.
If you're an advertiser trying to reach the most valuable ears, we've got the shows that listeners have been tuning into for decades.
One call gets all three.
671-888-7346. That's 888-REIO.
Okay, here we are. Jose put on another really, really great halftime show. And now it's time for me to welcome to the airwaves Repeat.
Call in again, Repeat.
Yeah, let me repeat what I just said. It's now my honor to welcome to the airwaves Repeat. Should I repeat that or just say it again?
And
I don't see any repeat. Well, I'm going to go back into this article a little bit more, and when if Repeat calls, I'll stop and put him on the air. Okay, he says, so St. Augustine says, I've learned that we need to keep our humanity available for these people. There's a lot of factors involved in it, whether it's mental health or drugs. Sometimes it's bad decisions. Sometimes it's just you fall in a hole, struggle, and can't get out of it. So you just have to listen to what these people need and try to help them. Well, that's kind of what I was saying. We kind of see it a lot where the stories don't add up. We just try to uncover the most we can. And since OHAP is the lead government agency for it, we just try to make sure that the government services are made available if they're not. That doesn't make a whole lot of sense. We just try to make sure that the government services are available if they're not. But OHAP doesn't track down extended families of homeless individuals to verify the reasons for homelessness. Normal outreach, we just speak to them. If they have a son or daughter, maybe they can't reach them, or if they have next of kin, then we will ask if they want us to call them. If they need help like that, then we will help connect them with the family. OHAP's focus is on getting them the help they need. What we will try to do is try to find out if they have family and what the factors are. Guam is family support. It's a strange thing to see local people, Chamorro people or Filipino people without support because we have families on island. Throughout the island, homeless individuals of all ages are seen more frequently. And while St. Augustine confirmed there may have been some new homeless individuals, many of them have been without shelter since the beginning of the Wuhan virus pandemic. A lot of them are ones that were initially picked up and taken there, and then for whatever reasons over time, they ended up leaving Global Dorm. Well, one of our posters says, yeah, a lot of them don't want to stay in the shelters because can't drink, can't do drugs, you got to go to bed at night. You can't live the way you want to, like you can on the street. So we've seen most of them around, and we keep track of them and offer them whatever services they need if they need services, food or anything else like that. A number of them have also been elderly who have been displaced or embarrassed by their situation. If they don't have their own house or are renting, they could come across a landlord that sees the market and might want to go for a sale. A lot of it could be their family support is missing. Either their kids are off island or they have their own families and they're embarrassed to intrude and would rather rough it out and try to see how they can make it. Homeless families with small children are also seen more and more. Addressing this sector of homeless population is an area government officials are trying to learn more about. The Lieutenant Governor wants to learn more about the Child Protective Services policies. What defines a child as something where you need to intervene, and do you either keep the family in a situation where the look in the child is clean and still going to school, or do you take that child away? The Lieutenant Governor is trying to think about what's the best way to go about that because he believes no child should be unsheltered ever. Let's give the Lieutenant Governor a hand. He said OHAP is brainstorming on how to also address panhandlers with children on the streets. I guess doing a visual, seeing if they're safe, if they're lacking hygiene. We will actually call our homeless coalition partners. OHAP is also hoping to open a shelter of their own. We do have that building pending renovations. Hopefully within 3 to 6 months, we're able to renovate the building and get it open for homeless people. Well, I guess I have to say I'm pessimistic about the attitude that I detect there. Once again, repeating, if the government wants to take the effort to find people who are living on the streets and help them get back, to the position where they don't have to live on the streets, fine. But it's not the government's job to assure people that no matter what, they can stay in a government shelter for the rest of their life. And that's kind of the tough part for me. Okay, so I've got repeat here. We're ready to go forward. We may have to repeat. Hello, repeat.
Alpha Day, Uncle Bob, Jose, and all the tailgaters. Sorry, I was on the line earlier, but I take a call from Germany. I told you I was a part-time military magistrate, and sometimes I still have to tend to those duties. Anyways, I was listening to what you're talking about that article, and recently with this loan forgiveness thing that recently passed, I don't know how to say it. There's so many people that are saying different things, well, if they could forgive the PPP, there's so many horrible analogies that are totally faulty in comparison to what this is. And my whole thing about it is there are a lot of people who took out student loans, and then after they got their education, they prioritized and didn't get that $1,800 iPhone, and instead got that $90 flip phone and paid off their student loans. And then they, for being such good stewards of their own resources, they get punished because everybody else who ignored their student loans now gets a pass. And people are saying, well, that's not a bad thing. I said, well, it is a bad thing because the tax rolls are not for charity. Someone said to me, I paid off my student loans, and if others weren't able to do it and we can pay it off for them, I'm okay with that. I said, you can be okay with that if it was your personal savings that was paying off those loans. But it's not. It's the taxpayers' money. And the money from taxes are supposed to be for public works and government programs, not government programs, but government services. Now, the problem is we start to have all these government programs that are really just charities. And there are charities out there that could wipe out this debt and then some. There's so many scholarships that go unclaimed and unused, billions and billions of dollars of scholarships. Why don't they take that money and wipe out the student debt? To use taxpayer money is just wrong. It's just fundamentally wrong. Government is not a charity. That's the bottom line. No matter how many times you try to compare it to other things that the government has done. The PPP was spurred on by a pandemic, a crisis, and it was always designed to be forgiven. People don't realize that, right? And so that was to avert a crisis brought on, an economic crisis brought on by a world disaster, a worldwide disaster. Totally different from forgiving student loans that people neglected to pay.
I agree, Pete. It comes back again to what I keep saying: an effective, efficient government operating within the rule of law, providing basic government services on at least a break-even basis. We don't need to go beyond that. We don't need to have a government, whether it's local or national, that tries to be kind, tries to be charitable, tries to help people, because this is where you wind up.
Yeah, that's exactly right. When you coddle people, you create dependency, and then we just have a welfare state, and we're starting to see that actually in the military, right? You join the military to serve your country, which is what I did. And nowadays, you see people going in because they want all the benefits. They want, all the things that come with it, and then they don't have the work ethic, and then all of a sudden we're rushing to kick them out of the military because they're not fit for the military. Well, why did we take them in the first place? And why did they want to come in the first place? They didn't come in because they wanted to serve. They came in, a lot of them came in because they wanted all the benefits.
True enough, Pete. So, Pete, as long as I got you here, let's talk about the Attorney General race. What can you tell me about the Attorney General race?
Well, I can just say from my observation, Moylan didn't campaign. He didn't spend a cent. So how do you explain the results compared to the last race? Well, it's Levin who campaigned against himself, I can honestly say, because I was in the belly of the beast and I saw it for myself, and I was exposed to it myself, or I was subjected to certain reprisal, when I myself was a whistleblower about what was going on there. And he's recalcitrant. He refuses to see that there's a problem, It's just boggles my mind, but I guess he's from a different generation or mindset, and this is just not a priority. I've worked for many generals and many other commanders, lower level, and we're always taught that the mission and how things run is always going to be based on the commander's priorities. And you got to understand your commander's priorities, and your job as subordinate officers and subordinate staff is to support the commander's priorities. Well, what happens when you have a commander that has the wrong priorities? All the things that need to be done to accomplish the mandate or the mission is not going to get done when his priorities are not in line with what the organization's mission is.
Yeah, well, when it comes to the Attorney General, I think as far as the people are concerned, the criminal law part of it is the most important part of it at all, because it's so easily understood, and it can have such a personal impact on people, and he seems to think that that's the least important part of his duties.
Right, and we always talk about these criminals that catch and release, and that's true, but then also, too, there's some that get stuck in DOC, and we're just waiting for a 2-page document so that we could execute this document and get them released and put on probation. And these are the ones that don't violate. These are the ones that are good as far as, living up to their release conditions. We've got a lot of people that need to be released, and we're waiting months and months and months for a 2-3-page document just so that we can execute this document to make it official and put them on probationary status.
Probation or parole, Pete?
For probation. There's some people that, they're pretrial, they're waiting. We're just going to do a no time plea. But meanwhile, they can't be released until this plea is executed. So we've got, and it's causing overcrowding up there. So we're overcrowding the prison with the good actors, and we're releasing all the bad actors.
Because the prosecutors aren't moving the
well, they don't have they don't have the horsepower.
Yeah.
The table is empty.
I see. So if you were going to give Doug Moylan any advice as to what he should do between now and November 8th, what would it be?
Well, you have to continue to sound the horn, sound the alarm about the crisis that we're in. And I think it's a good indication what the primary numbers showed us. I think he needs to be more visible, because at the end of the day, in order to get into that seat, you have to get over the hurdle, which is the election. it's good to have great intention, and it's good to have integrity, and it's good to have credentials, and it's good to have experience and the gumption to be there. But if you can't get into the seat in the first place, then none of that's going to matter.
Also, Rands don't make policy. Well, let me ask you this, Pete. You were going to run for Attorney General at one time, and then you started a PAC. What's the name of your PAC?
The Responsible Guam PAC.
Yeah. Now, the Responsible Guam PAC is kind of completed its mission with respect to Michael San Nicolas. Are you finished with? Maybe I'm assuming. Are you finished with Michael San Nicolas, or you still?
No. So the PAC had we had intended to launch a platform. However, the committee members, some of them got bogged down with a lot of things, and so we ended up deciding to wait until the general to launch that because it would have been a lot less work now that we know who the candidates for the general are, instead of trying to make this big, massive database of all the candidates that were running in the primary. So now that the general is on the horizon, that's our next target, is to get the information out there within the next couple of weeks.
So is it possible that Responsible Guam will turn its cannon loose on leaving in January?
Well, it's supposed to be a fair and balanced place where people can go and look at candidate profiles, right? So it's going to contain the candidates for Congress, the candidates for AG, the candidates for the legislature, and then, of course, the governor's race. And so we'll put all the pros and cons and of each of the candidates on there, but also some background information on them. And that was the goal and purpose. And one of the other reasons why we failed to launch for the primary was we were looking at the other outlets out there that were doing candidate profiles, and they seem to be getting a lot of information out and giving a lot of access to the candidates. But the problem with that still remains is that there's not one place where you can go and everything is consolidated, and we hope to make it comprehensive, right? That was the goal, and it still is the goal, but we just weren't able to launch it for the primary. We're now going to target doing it for the general.
Yesterday, I made the remark that of all the elections coming up on November 8th, the election for Attorney General is the most important, more important even than the gubernatorial.
I would agree with that. I would definitely agree with that. And I bet you, I have a suspicion, a sneaky suspicion, that it's important to the gubernatorial candidates, more important to them than anybody else, because they're going to have to live with that AG.
Yeah.
Whoever that is.
Right.
Yeah. So we'll see. All is fair in love and war and politics.
I think so. Well, thanks again for calling back, Repeat. You didn't even need to say it twice. You were so clear. Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, Peter Santos, former member of the prosecution team at the Attorney General, left the Attorney General, is now working at the alternate public defender office. It's been pretty critical of leaving Camacho on this show. Okay, let's head for Wrigley Field in the seventh inning stretch.
Hafaday, this is Severina. Here at APL, our expertise and extensive network can help you grow your business and reach out to more global markets. As a responsible carrier, APL is also committed to a sustainable future, whether it's protecting the environment or investing our efforts in giving back to the community. Our dedicated teams in Guam, Saipan, and on U.S. mainland are here to support you. Call 588-4651 or visit www.apl.com.
Come try Guam's original Chamorro restaurant with Pica's Best 5 years running. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro. Experience Chef Peter's candied salmon over scallion coconut rice, octopus to naktak, Chamorro platter, and their award-winning gourmet hamburgers. Or if you're looking for something healthy, try their keto-friendly menu. Come and enjoy Mezcla's half-a-day service at their Hagåtña and Grand Plaza Tuman location. Call their Hagåtña location at 479-2652 for reservations.
Okay, here we are, Wrigley Field, 7th inning stretch. That means I got just 2 innings more to go on Tall Tales here. I'm going to shift to national news now and talk about the search warrant and the raid on Mar-a-Lago, etc. And this is from a columnist named David French, who has a column in The Atlantic, of all places. I read The Atlantic, almost all of it. Not because it's so good, but because it's there, and I want to see what the other side is doing. So here's from David French, what the Trump search warrant tells us. Here is my latest article for The Atlantic. As I reviewed the heavily redacted affidavit relating to the FBI's warrant to search Mar-a-Lago earlier this month, I was reminded of the phrase from the Apostle Paul in his first letter to the church in Corinth, that we see through a glass darkly. Yes, we are able to discern certain things, but the whole truth remains hidden. We must approach the matter with extreme caution. I'd compare the unredacted portions of the warrant affidavit to a case outline, a lawyer's summary. We know the broad strokes of a potential criminal case against former President Trump, and we know why the Department of Justice was alarmed by his conduct, but we don't know the details. And in a potential criminal case, the details truly matter. So here's the basic story as far as we can make out from the affidavit. On January 18, 2022, Trump provided the National Archives and Records Administration with 15 boxes of records. When NARA reviewed those records, it found 184 unique documents bearing classification markings. Of those documents, 25 were marked top secret. Moreover, several of the documents contain quite specific dissemination controls, including HCS and SI markings. As the warrant explains, HCS refers to a form of sensitive, compartmented information. SCI, that is designed to protect intelligence information derived from clandestine human sources. SI, which stands for Special Intelligence, refers to a form of SI that is designed to protect technical and intelligence information derived from the monitoring of foreign communication signals by other than intended recipients. To put it plainly, information that contains HCS or SI markings are among our nation's most closely guarded secrets. Indeed, when Trump handed them over, he provided evidence that he'd already potentially violated federal law by illegally removing national defense information from its proper place of custody. Because Trump handed over classified information, NARA contacted the Department of Justice. Interestingly enough, the affidavit describes how the very same day that NARA informed Congress's Committee on Oversight and Reform that it had found classified information in the former president's records, a Trump spokesperson put out a statement on his behalf claiming the National Archives did not find anything. At this point, however, the affidavit goes dark. Pages of redaction block sight of any additional details. Nevertheless, a few items of interest are still discernible. First, the Department of Justice very obviously did not believe that Trump had turned over all classified national defense information. One of the subject headings states that baldly, there is probable cause to believe the documents containing classified NDI and presidential records remain at the premises. Indeed, news reports indicate that DOJ's concerns were justified. On Monday, the New York Times reported that DOJ had obtained additional classified information in June and then seized even more classified information when it searched Mar-a-Lago earlier this month. Second, DOJ also stated that there was probable cause to believe that evidence of obstruction would be found at Mar-a-Lago. These legal claims are not surprising. After all, the search warrant itself stated it was based on evidence of violation of criminal statutes relating to improper handling of national defense information and to obstruction of justice. Third, the warrant affidavit notably mentions the claim by Trump's spokesperson in May that the former president had declassified the documents, and it includes a letter from Trump's counsel asserting that Trump had absolute authority to classify the documents. As the political columnist and former prosecutor Renato Mariotti noted on Twitter, quote, typically defense counsel have found very limited information about criminal investigations, and their views are not presented by prosecutors to the judge. That's why they're defense counsel. When checking a warrant, as a result, the magistrate in Miami knew of Trump's legal objections, yet granted the warrant anyway. This was not simply a matter of the judge taking DOJ's assertions, quote, on faith. He reviewed both DOJ's assertions and Trump's documented objections. Crucially, Trump's lawyer did not assert that Trump had turned over all relevant national defense information. What to make of all this? Here's what the evidence indicates so far. Trump possessed top-secret documents. The Justice Department believed he possessed them improperly and stored them improperly. Trump did not turn over all classified material when asked. DOJ believes that evidence of obstruction exists. DOJ knew about and disregarded, along with the magistrate, Trump's declassification defense. At the same time, we don't know, and may not know for a long time, the precise nature of the classified materials. We don't know who had access to those materials, and we are almost entirely in the dark about the reasons DOJ asserts probable cause to suspect obstruction of justice. This latter point is particularly important. The specter of the FBI investigation of Hillary Clinton haunts the proceedings. Let me repeat. The specter of the FBI investigation of Hillary Clinton haunts these proceedings. She was not charged after improperly storing classified national defense information on a private server, including information classified at the same top secret SCI level as some documents located at Mar-a-Lago. When then the FBI Director James Comey announced that his agency was not recommending a prosecution of Clinton, he articulated a prudential standard. Now tie a string around your brain and attach the phrase prudential standard to that. He articulated a prudential standard that he said governed prior charging decisions. Prudential means we could, but there are reasons beyond the merits that we don't want to. All the cases prosecuted involve some combination of clearly intentional and willful mishandling of classified information or vast quantities of materials exposed in such a way as to support an inference of intentional misconduct or indications of disloyalty to the United States or efforts to obstruct justice. We do not see these things here. That's what Comey said. If that's the prudential standard that was applied to Clinton, the same standard should be applied to Trump. This doesn't mean he shouldn't be prosecuted. It does mean that if the DOJ chooses to prosecute, it should come forward with clear evidence of the exact misconduct identified above. The distinctions between Clinton's case and Trump's case would have to be transparently obvious. Well, I got to stop here, and there's something that's kind of obvious to me, which is a greater security risk. Taking some classified documents and hiding them in the closet at Mar-a-Lago, or having them on a server that's connected to the internet. That's a pretty easy one, isn't it?
Already know the answer.
Yeah.
So did the FBI.
Yeah. Of course, the search warrant affidavit was not released to provide public justification for prosecution. We're a long way from knowing whether sufficient evidence exists to warrant a criminal charge. Well, Jose, there's substantial evidence there. Isn't that enough? Hell no.
No?
No. That's only enough for a congressional committee that wants to get in the kangaroo importation business to really sock it to a delegate from Guam. The affidavit was released, albeit in a redacted form, to provide public justification for the search. Although we don't yet know all of the evidence supporting DOJ's unprecedented decision to search a former president's home, we do now have greater insight into the key facts. Given that knowledge, the search looks less like a publicized witch hunt and more like an action of last resort, one the Justice Department took only after it had tried and failed to obtain cooperation from the former president. The available evidence is pointing in one direction. Trump may be furious about the search, but he has only himself to blame. Well, David French, columnist for The Atlantic.
Do you remember Sandy Berger?
I remember the name, yeah.
He was, I don't know if he was caught or he was said he was bringing documents out of the Pentagon in the seat of his pants, literally. Hiding documents, too.
Yeah. Yeah, we had one from Turley where one of them, he stuck them in his socks. Yeah. Okay. Still on the international scene, we now head for the Solomon Islands. The Solomon Islands, you perhaps heard of Guadalcanal? Yeah, that's in the Solomon Islands. Solomon Islands denies port call for Guam-based U.S. Coast Guard cutter. This article I got from Stars and Stripes. The Solomon Islands recently denied entry to a U.S. Coast Guard cutter for a scheduled port call, further raising concerns that the Oceania nation is severing U.S. ties in favor of China. The U.S. Coast Guard cutter Oliver Henry, which is home-based in Guam, was scheduled for a routine logistics port call on Guadalcanal. Lieutenant Kristen Cam, a spokeswoman for the 14th Coast Guard District in Hawaii, said in an email today. The government of the Solomon Islands did not respond to the U.S. government's request for diplomatic clearance for the vessel to refuel and provision in Honiara. That's the capital of the Solomons. Accordingly, Guam Coast Guard cutter Oliver Henry diverted to Papua New Guinea to refuel and provision. The Oliver Henry arrived on Tuesday in Papua New Guinea for a port visit, according to a Coast Guard news release that day. The visit following the Coast Guard's patrol in parts of the Coral Sea and the Solomon Islands and Papua New Guinea exclusive economic zones. The visit followed the Coast Guard patrol in parts of the Coral Sea and the Solomon Islands and Papua New Guinea exclusive economic zones, the release said. The Coast Guard declined to disclose the date the cutter had intended to make the Guadalcanal port call, citing operational security concerns. The U.S. Department of State is in contact with the government of the Solomon Islands and expects all future clearances will be provided to U.S. ships. Sea Waves magazine tweeted August 24 that the Oliver Henry and the British patrol vessel HMS Spey were denied entry into the Solomons. The islands were the setting for a major Allied campaign during World War II, beginning with when U.S. Marines landed on Guadalcanal in August 1942. In the decades since the war ended, American focus has drifted from the island nation. The U.S. closed its embassy in Honiara in 1993. Perhaps not the wisest move. In 2019, Solomon Islands switched its diplomatic recognition from Taiwan to Beijing, following a years-long pressure campaign by China to do so. In March, a leaked draft security agreement between the two nations seems to authorize China to port warships and provide police assistance to the Solomons. Officials of both countries have denied that China will establish a military base there. Nevertheless, U.S. and Australian officials have reacted with alarm over the prospect of China displacing their longtime leadership roles in the region. Most recently, Senator Martha Blackburn, a Tennessee Republican, stopped Wednesday in the Solomons and Papua New Guinea en route to Taiwan, where she arrived Thursday. U.S. Deputy Secretary of State Wendy Sherman and U.S. Ambassador to Australia Carolyn Kennedy traveled to the Solomons earlier this month to commemorate the 80th anniversary of the start of the Battle of Guadalcanal. Solomon Islands Prime Minister Manasseh Sogavare failed to show for the event, even though he was slated to speak, with some local media outlets calling it a snub. Sherman and Sogavare met later that day, where the deputy secretary underscored U.S. concerns about security pact with China. Yeah, this is news. It's probably not good news, but it probably is going to have an impact on us. So I've got a lot more to say about this, but I notice I've got Frenchie on the line here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to Churchill Downs, and I'm going to come back and we'll chat with Frenchie for a few minutes at the end of the show.
Everyone has a busy schedule these days, and sometimes we forget to schedule our routine dental checkup and cleaning. Don't neglect your dental health. Schedule one today with Dr. Robert Yang and his Smile Team, conveniently located at the East West Business Center on Marine Drive, Upper Tumon. Call us today at 647-8702 or 3. Again, that's 647-8702 or 647-8703. We make smiles happen.
We're already Pika's best radio station, but we're always looking for ways to be even better. Announcing the point on Alexa. In addition to our FM and HD radio feeds, our incredible app, informative website, Facebook Live, and YouTube Live, you can now tell Alexa to stream The Point. And your smart speaker will start playing whatever we're saying. News and views 24/7 with your 4-word command. Alexa, stream The Point.
Here we are, Churchill Downs, Louisville, Kentucky, and we're going to take that SST again straight from Louisville, Kentucky to Charles de Gaulle Airport in Paris. Now that we know there are 3 airports in Paris, and that Charles de Gaulle is the main airport. So thanks for the guidance, Frenchie. Tell us about the Solomon Islands.
Well, you know, the Solomon Island is a perfect case study about stupid but really dumb Australian diplomatic movements and a tendency by the U.S. to follow Australia in that neck of the ocean. The Australians have had a grander issues where they think that they are, you know, all the seas around Australia is a Mar Australia, just like you had a Mar Romana in the Mediterranean 2,000 years ago. And the problem is that they do not have what it takes to push their own policy. You know, they have engaged for many years in trying to have a diplomatic strong arm with a lot of islands around them, their own island, and a lot of time with catastrophic results. The Solomon Island is pretty particular, is that they had a very long and very fruitful relationship with Taiwan. And then they elected the current president, who is almost as corrupt as Hunter Biden. I know it's hard to believe, but he took so much money from the Chinese, he switched allegiance in 2019. Most of the islands outside of the capital revolted against that move. And actually, when they say, well, there was Chinese rioting, people rioting against the Chinese, no, they were rioting against actually Taiwanese store owners that have been there sometimes for 3 generations. And the issue is that the Australian, at the beginning, even sent police to help that corrupt government to restore order, which, if they had not been, the government would have been overthrown, and we wouldn't be in the situation we are in now. Now, last winter, the Chinese sent riot police to help the government that they bought off. And now we have a situation where they think they can basically say no to whoever they want to. And we end up with them turning down our boats trying to make a port calls. This is not going to get better. It's going to get worse before it gets better. And the Australians are fully to blame with their folly of grandeur that they've been having, trying to kick the French out of New Caledonia, trying to push Wallis and Futuna to do their bidding, where they do not, they cannot even send help when they need it. And the Solomon Island is the perfect example of that dumbfounded policy that they have been having since at least the mid-'80s. And of course, it didn't help that Jimmy Carter in the '80s bought off on that policy and basically put in march the closing of the embassy in the '90s. Even though he was no longer president, he's the one that started with Zbigniew Brzezinski closing the embassy there and being represented by the Australian, which was as stupid, bonehead stupid as we could get. And now we are reaping the fruits of those stupid policies. And it's, like I say, it's going to get worse before it gets better.
Yeah, I see what you're saying, Frenchie. So, yeah. Yeah, the Australians want to be the big dog in that part of the world.
Yeah, the Australians are a chihuahua trying to act like a pit bull, and they cannot back it up. Now, we know chihuahuas bite, but we cannot back it up. It's a small country. It's a big country geographically, but Taiwan has more people than Australia. You know, I mean, it's just amazing. They have follies of grandeur, and the Americans have helped them make believe that they were the big dog in the area, and they're not. The big dog in the area is Indonesia, which is a giant of its own, and who we should help because they are very worried about the expansion of the CCP in their region. But this is where we at when we have morons at the State Department like we do now and that we have had for quite a long time. They don't have a plan B. They just double down on their stupidity. And we are paying the price, not only with the Treasury, but unfortunately sometimes when we send our own troops to go and clean up like we did in the 1940s with blood and tears. And we don't learn from our mistakes, and it's very sad.
True enough. So with respect to Australian foreign policy, would it be fair to say, Frenchie, that their attempts to act like the tough guy in the region kind of boomeranged on them?
Exactly. You are not hopping very far on that one.
Yeah.
Yeah, it actually did, you know, and you saw the pushback from smaller countries like Malaysia, like Thailand, where, you know, Australians have a terrible reputation, and they still had a decent reputation until recently in India, but the Indians are getting fed up with the Australians as well. So, they, you know, are all or nothing helping the Australian because they are English speakers is not very wise, and we should look a little.
Frenchie, they're English speakers?
Well, yeah, some could argue that
just a little bit, I think, you know,
like the Scots are. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, thanks for the enlightenment again, Frenchie. I always appreciate it. Yeah, I've been down there a lot of times, and I always wondered what language it was they speak down there.
Down under?
Yeah. Okay, we got Johnny Utah has a question about obstruction. Tell me more, Johnny Utah.
Hey, good morning, Judge. I really appreciated your callers today, by the way. That was really nice. I enjoyed listening to Lee Pete and Frenchie. And I've been curious. I've been studying up on that whole Solomon thing. To the Trump issue with the investigation, you did hear, though, that Tim Tebow, the agent that was responsible for the Hunter Biden laptop cover-up and the and he was the mind, basically the mind behind the kidnapping plot of the governor of Michigan, and also very much involved with this whole investigation of Trump's home in Florida, that he was removed from the FBI office on Friday and resigned. That's changing the playing field here, and also with in respect to Hillary Clinton, she was not the president when she removed classified documents. Trump was. Trump had the ability, from my understanding, to declassify things, and there's no protocol for that process. It's like,
well, I think there is, and I think there is, and I think that's where that argument kind of went off the rails. It's more than just waving your magic wand and saying, "I declassify thee."
Okay. If he, let's say that the documents that he has are not documents that are incriminating to him, but are incriminating to the FBI and Biden and his family. Let's say that he has incriminating evidence on the federal government, and that's why he was holding on to it, and that's what they wanted to get back. Let's say that he did not commit a crime. If you don't commit a crime, is it possible to commit obstruction?
You know, that term is a will o' the wisp, and I'd have to go back and do a little research before I answered that question.
Yeah, that's I guess my question is, if you're being investigated for a crime that ends up not being a crime in the just of the law, how do you commit obstruction?
Well, it worked for Mark Smith, didn't it? The jury brought in a guilty verdict, and the judge said, yeah, but he didn't commit a crime, so we got to let him go. Yeah, the obstruction thing would, I think, get involved with someone who had committed a crime and used some mechanism to prevent him being prosecuted for that crime, himself or someone else.
I don't think that's the case here. I actually think the case here with Trump is he has evidence that the liberal leftist deep state doesn't want him to have.
Well, there's nothing so far that would suggest that, but there's
something that doesn't suggest it, because look how redacted the affidavit was. If they had anything on Trump, they would have left that wide open.
Well, you know, when you have an affidavit that names, let's say that you had someone, let's say that, for example, let's say that Trump's son was the source of some of the facts that went into the affidavit, and his name is redacted from the affidavit for obvious reasons. That would be understandable. I gotta go, Johnny.
Okay, let's continue. We'll try to pick this up some more if we can. Is that all right?
All right, sure. Let's go, Brandon.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
A high-profile FBI agent walks away. I'm Jack Callahan, Fox News. An FBI agent accused of alleged political bias is no longer with the Bureau. Assistant Special Agent in charge Timothy Tebow retired over the weekend, and Fox News has learned he was walked out of the Washington field office on Friday, as is standard procedure. Iowa Senator Chuck Grassley relayed whistleblower accusations to FBI Director Christopher Wray several weeks ago, the director telling a Senate hearing earlier this month.
When I read the letter that describes the kinds of things that you're talking about, I found it deeply troubling.
There is no comment from the FBI on Agent Tebow's departure, as it is a personnel matter. A federal judge considering a request from former President Trump to appoint a special master to oversee the inspection of documents seized from his home says her preliminary intent is to grant the request. But the Justice Department is telling the court no reason to.
The Justice Department filed a motion and announced a team already and independently reviewed the evidence from Mar-a-Lago and found a limited set of materials that potentially contain attorney-client privileged information.
Fox's David Spud reports the so-called taint team will segregate those documents. A Trump attorney says they aren't sure if the government's lawyers can be trusted. Little or no drinkable water is available in Jackson, Mississippi this morning. Governor Tate Reeves declaring a state of emergency.
Until it is fixed, it means we do not have reliable running water at scale. It means the city cannot produce enough water to fight fires, to reliably flush toilets, and to meet other critical needs.
Problems with the city's only water treatment plant, including pump failures, were made worse by weekend flooding. The state will begin distributing emergency drinking water supplies this morning. America is listening to Fox News.
Get all of your favorite Fox News podcasts ad-free on Apple Podcasts with Fox News Podcasts Plus. From Trey Gowdy, the Fox News Rundown, Will Kane, Brian Kilmeade, and so much more. Go to foxnewspodcasts.com for all the details.